parliaments represented. So you can have people from the Cambodian parliament as well, and you had from the French parliament, the House of Commons, also members of
European Parliament. European Parliament.
MEPs who then become members of, and transnational in the sense that it's not particularly Italian, although the leadership tends to be still Italian if you count the numbers, but it's always been open to, for example, their secretaries, party secretaries from the 80s and 90s were Belgian and French. There was no particular national criterion in selecting.
And there is no the expulsion.
And you cannot send people out,
yeah.
Although they behave like me. I cannot be sent out for rendering a non-faithful account of the Radical Party to you. As I said, an electoral list, often with the name of people rather than the name Radical Party. An NGO, the party is a non-governmental organization with consultative status within the United Nations framework, so you work inside the institution, but also outside the institution when needed, as a member of the Discourse Coalition on big campaigns like anti-prohibitionism. Obviously, the agenda is first to create enough arguments to demolish prohibitionism first, even before you get to specific actions. Sometimes, however, the party has been a member of more structured advocacy coalitions, like the Inter-Party Parliamentary Alliance for Tibet in the European Parliament. That's quite an organized, resourceful advocacy coalition for Tibet. What do we have? So the conclusion here, essentially, don't be ideological, pick up some issues, break the left-right spectrum as much as possible, and attract people on pragmatic issues. Then with non-violence, you put the individual at the center of political activity, because to fight non-violent activities, you don't need to have only male people with guns. You can also have women and children. You have people who are very ill that can still fight. One technique used is to diminish the tablets, so you suffer a bit more if you're ill. Is a technique of non-violence, is a self-reduction of medication that has been used as a technique for those who cannot participate otherwise. 5 minutes on getting closer to things that interest you. The position of the party on Europe is very close to our friends from the European Federalist Movement. I have a separate lecture on the 2010 manifesto for you guys, but essentially it's an idea of federation in the sense that what we should propose now to the people is no longer the state. The state, at least in Western Europe, I think we have many experiences of weak authoritarian states outside Europe, has failed for two reasons. It is against individual liberties. The state has not been able to really protect liberties. That's a diagnosis, I'm just explaining what they say. And the state has not been able to produce economic wealth. So it's contrary to liberal principles to still propose the state as the way forward for politics. The notion of federation is very much a notion of bottom-up federalism. No one in these parties for a big and stronger European Commission, for example, just to be clear on what we are talking about. I think one thing that struck me when I read the documentation is, for example, on Palestine, the party would not propose to the Palestinians who are suffering a new Palestinian state, because that would make it the same mistake that were made in Romania, in Italy, in Portugal in the 20th century, and we would move it 1 century forward again. Obviously, this has made them very capable of navigating the phenomenon of Europeanization I mentioned before, but also very skeptical about just consolidating, creating the super state at the European level. So there's a very different alchemy of very sophisticated federalist design. On global politics, here is the notion of a trans party. Essentially, the message is very simple. The party since '89 has been no longer identified with the country, but even from the origin, the party was never called the Italian Radical Party, and it was always European and federalist, so that the minimum level of aggregation was always Europe. The idea was exactly to get people from different parliaments to be active in a non-ideological way on specific campaigns. That's the notion of the trans-party and the transnationality. This is a nice photo where we see Matteo protesting on the tube going outside the Elizabeth Conference Center. So you are putting on the spot there. But I want to say something here on some campaigns. One was very well before Tony Blair, the campaign to eliminate starvation and world hunger since '79, and that was fantastic to bring the party very close to the Catholic orthodoxy and being enthusiastically welcomed in St. Peter's Square in Rome on Easter Day by the Pope. So there is nothing wrong, other than having fought against the Catholic Church on abortion and divorce. You can have alliance on this. And a lot of motions voted by the European Parliament and by international institutions were tabled upon the initiative of the Radical Party. Then, of course, as we know, that became a global movement and a World Bank movement. We're not making the causal claim that this liberal party has created all that. Yeah, we have to think in terms of creating and engaging within discourse and advocacy coalitions. Another successful campaign is the one on female genital mutilation, where militants have tracked down country after country the number of states that have decided to stop or terminate what's called traditional practices that we would call female genital mutilation. Many campaigns on human rights. Matteo was in Mali before December. Some party leaders, Olivier Dupuy was arrested in Laos and declared an enemy of the state for protesting for human rights. Albania, just on the doorstep of Italy, etc., etc. Those are different campaigns. Tibet, particularly intense with the support of the Dalai Lama on the campaign for autonomy rather than independence of Tibet, and I think for a radical it will be very difficult to fight for independence of Tibet, because that will look again as proposing the state as the future to the Tibetan movement. See, Matteo is taking notes of all the wrong things I said, so that's my photo. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the book right, but that's a nice book that Obama read by Sola Oleski, Rules for Radicals, an American book, very popular in the US. So, I have to tell you about the lessons, of course, just skipping too much to the end. I want to talk actually about the limitations, because I think I've been trumpeting too much the success of the Radical Party. I see three big limitations. One is that most of the activity of the party has been on the law rather than policy. So the mantra has always been change the law, get this parliament to approve this new law, get the UN to approve a moratorium, whereas the engagement really with how policy is delivered, implemented, administered, so all the policy dimension, which is not just passing a law in parliament, but also looking after implementation and the whole notion, I think, of administrative reform and working within public administration, implementation structures, implementation networks, has been missed. Obviously, that requires hundreds of people, because it's easier to target a specific bill that you want to become a bill of rights, establishing something, than really to be active on how, let's say, a law on soft drugs is really implemented on the ground. I can see why that is a limitation, but in that I think that the party has always been against the party regimes, the cartel party in Italy, but now the parties do not exist